Welcome back to Kind Regards to the show. I was talking with my buddy one time, and this is years ago now, and he said, I was talking about, I guess, all the things we should be doing, and meditating and exercise and all this stuff. And he looked at me like I was insane, like I was telling him something he already knew, which I was. And he said this very point, he said, dude, we all know what we should be doing. Everyone knows that they should be, doing yoga for 30 minutes and meditating and, eating a healthy diet. Who doesn't know what we're supposed to be doing? Everybody knows. It's about doing it. It's about actually doing it. Following through. That's what we can't do. That's what we need help doing. And this strikes me as pretty fundamentally true. No one that I know is walking through life going oh, I just wish I had an answer of how to solve this problem. It's mostly action that we have trouble with. And why is this? Well, one reason that I touched on was in the Babies on TikTok episode, where essentially we might not have enough self-love. Fundamentally, it might be easier to care for other people than it is to care for ourselves. This insight came to me when my ma said to me when I was sick one time. I was sick and I was living alone, so I had no one to sort of take care of me. She said, "I'll make sure you take care of yourself like you're someone that you love, like you're someone that you care for." And I remember going, oh, whoa, yeah, if I was caring for my brother, I'd be making him lemon and ginger teas, and I'd be making him delicious soups, and I'd be slaving away almost. I definitely not prescribe him cigarettes and, watching TV all the time. I'd try and get him a really restful time, And I'm like, damn, why don't I do that for myself? And I think the reason is because it's hard to love ourselves. That doesn't come easily for most of us. And so, yeah, it's hard to take all the prescriptions, that we get from, the moral sort of prescriptions or the well-being prescriptions from the world. You should be journaling about gratitude, and you should be, having positive self-talk and all this stuff, exercising regularly, healthy diet. It's hard to take this advice and really try and nourish ourselves like we're someone that we love. Without that love there's just indifference, right? Or worse, there's a kind of repulsion or a self-hatred or something like that. Those are pretty strong words. But an indifference where you just go, oh, it's just me. I'll be fine, whatever, who cares? I'll manage. I just want to do this other thing instead. And another reason I think that we don't do this is because of the perfectionism perspective. So on one hand, it's hard to love ourselves. But on the other hand, if we know everything that we're supposed to be doing, that's a bind, right? Because we've got all these fabulous ideas, of wake up, do yoga, then watch the sunrise, then do this other thing, and it's all super wholesome. And we have this perfect ideal, and yet to achieve that perfection is literally impossible. We don't have enough time in the day. We don't have the same amount of energy every day to do the perfect thing every single day. Some days we're naturally and I think rightfully gonna feel lower energy and feel like those things aren't actually applicable for us, or that we don't want to do them, whatever. And so this perfectionism pushes us away, and it's much easier to not begin a thing than to fail at the thing, right? It's so much easier to just never do yoga than it is to suck at yoga and then fail at yoga, and then 6 months goes past, and then you give it another crack at doing a 30-day yoga challenge, and then you suck at it again, you only get to day 5 again, and on and on. That hurts us and contributes to our negative sort of self-image, and that can be really hard. And it's much easier instead to go nihilistic, to go who even cares anyway? What does yoga matter? Everyone's going to die. What's being a little bit more flexible going to do for me? It's easier to sort of not try it all, to go nihilistic and go the easier route ultimately. Not that nihilism is easy, but it is a bit of a cop out in this circumstance that I'm describing, right? It means that you don't have to try to do the yoga, don't have to try to do the healthier routine, etc., etc. And I think I've got a solution to this, and I think it's to go big picture. And by that I mean sort of intergenerational. My granddad, both of them actually, on both sides, grew up in a really hard time. You know, they would have grown up, you know, during the war, during the Second World War. One in Wales and one in Australia. They both grew up in relative sort of poverty. They had parents who didn't follow any kind of like parenting textbook. You know, they were pretty fast and loose, and I shouldn't smile. It's horrible. If I knew what they went through, if I actually knew, I wouldn't be smiling. And I think a lot of our grandparents are like this. They were unloved and uncared for, or at least they were not. The love and the care was not transmitted in a healthy way. There's. It's a very common story that people back in this time did not know how to parent. They did not know how to treat children with the adequate, love and compassion. Let's just sum it all up with that. But the child's development wasn't understood very well, so their learning wasn't understood. So we just treated them like little human beings, like little adults. But anyways, they had a terrible upbringing, and had to fight to escape the traps of trauma, the traps of their damaged, I suppose, psychology, and they had to heal themselves in a significant way in order to be better than their parents were, to raise children better than their parents raised them. And then that goes on to our parents. Both of my parents were raised by people who had really, really difficult childhoods. And so what kind of a parent does that make? It makes a parent who is really struggling, who's really struggling to sort of make sense of the world and their role in it, and how to treat other people, and rah rah rah. So I'm trying to do broad strokes here. I don't want to be too specific to my grandparents. But I think this is quite widely applicable, right? And then it comes down to us, and I am the grandchild of this grandparent, and I think, geez, he really battled it out, fought his demons to give my dad a good dad. And then my dad has gone even further than that. He was like cooking and doing dishes for and like doing chores for his household because his parents both worked 2 jobs, and he was doing that at like 13 or something crazy. So he barely had a childhood, and then goes straight into work and, does like a million years in a, institution to put food on our table and be loving towards us. And so I think like, then it comes down to us, but then there's 2 generations after that, right? Or more. We are hopefully going to have children and raise good children, and they're going to be a part of this huge sort of lineage of like everything was totally cooked post-war. People didn't know how to raise children. People didn't know how to love people. People had all this leftover trauma from losing friends and family members in the war. And then generation after generation, we get to here where we have all these great ideas floating around. We have the internet, which allows us to access great ideas. We're reading more and more psychology, and psychological terms are like floating into the sort of mainstream. And this can all be really helpful, really help people heal. And so this perspective, this intergenerational perspective, has 2, I think, huge benefits, which is that one, it is easier to care for our children's parents than it is to care for ourselves. Our children I don't even have kids, but when I imagine my children, I know that I'm going to love them so much, and I want everything for them. And then all I need to do is be like, well, I want them to have the best parents. I want them to have a loving father. I want them to have a father who has patience and who is calm and responsible, and who knows how to teach them things and how to be there for them and show them the attention that they deserve as people. I want them to have a father like that. And then I go, well, great. I'm that guy. I should care for myself and cultivate in myself what I want them to have. So it's easier to care for the parents of our children than it is to care for ourselves. The parents of our children are much easier to love, are much easier to put in effort for, because they're what our children need. Does that make sense? And then secondly, it overcomes this perfectionism bias of like, we know what to do, but we're not doing it. What the hell? It's like, no. Instead of I'm an individual in this world and I have this perfect ideal and one lifetime to reach it. Instead, it's like, well, no. My dad wasn't perfect. He's a great guy, but he wasn't perfect, and he isn't perfect now. But he came a long way from what his dad, is and was. So far, like, it's really amazing. But he's not perfect, and he doesn't have to be. He tried, he did his best, he's still doing his best, he's still trying. That's good. And so instead of having this one lifetime, 0 to 100, that's the progress that we have to make. Instead, we can go across this sort of intergenerational perspective and be like, okay, maybe my role, like maybe my granddad's role was to provide enough for my dad that he could provide enough for us. And then maybe one of my brothers is going to, change the world or do something really amazing, or, maybe the story of my granddad is being a granddad. And maybe my story is being a granddad or a father. Maybe my story isn't that I have to be this perfect person who's, good at everything and knows how to do sport and fix things and, start a not-for-profit and, be a meditation instructor. Like, maybe I don't have to do everything. Maybe my role is smaller than that. And maybe all I need to do is be a really good husband and father. Or maybe my role is even different than that. Maybe it's just to be a good grandfather. Maybe that's my role, and maybe that's what I'm here to do. And it doesn't mean that we need to throw the rest of it out, but it does, for me at least, like turn down that the perfectionism dial. And I go like, okay, I'm a part of a lineage. I'm a part of this evolution, not just in my family, but in the generations of the whole world. Every generation faces these big problems, and I'm just a part of that generation. I just have to face and the problems of my time and do my best and care about the world, and that's good enough. That's good enough. I don't have to achieve perfection in this life. Yeah, that's the intergenerational perspective, and how I think it's useful for overcoming the perfectionism of everybody knows what we need to do. Why aren't we doing it? Everyone knows we need to meditate for this long and do all this and eat no seed oils ever. Let's set that perfectionism aside. We're a part of this grand picture, and as long as we're making progress and trying our best and loving ourselves and all that stuff, we're doing good. And secondly, or rather firstly, it's easier to love me as the grandfather of my grandchildren. It's easier to take care of my health, to, meditate every day when I think, this is all training for my grandkids. This is all training for my children. My children are going to reap the rewards of my facing my emotional problems, my journaling every night, my improving communications with my wife. All of these things, I'm doing it for them. I'm doing it for my kids, which is much easier for me to do. It's much easier for me to love the parents of my children than it is to sort of naturally love myself. This has been Kind Regards. I hope you enjoyed. I hope this was useful to you. I hope this finds you well. Check out the Substack. There are articles there that I write. And YouTube, Spotify, there are links below. Thanks very much. Have a great day.